Check, check, check. I hope someone can hear me. All right, here we go. First, some housekeeping. I hope this is working. I'm sure George or someone will tell me if I'm not. In fact, I'll even cover the computers going here so I can keep track in case someone tells me that this is a disaster. You can't hear it. All right, now some basic housekeeping. This book is just product placement on my part, so I'm just going to hold it here for a second. Hold on. Yeah. Yes. So that's a little bit of product placement. Yeah. If I hadn't screwed up the whole situation with my the laptop I'm generally comfortable with, I would have a little more togetherness here, but the computer I'm attached to overheated, so we're on a different one, and this is wonderful. And we're going to talk about feminism. A couple things. This is sort of the continuation of a discussion or speech I made last year at Liberty Forum in New Hampshire, and it was women in the state, and I started off with feminism being the story of my life. We covered quite a bit of ground. It was about an hour's worth of discussion, or perhaps ranting on my part. It's a much more exciting discussion to me now than it was last year, because this is what is coming out on April 15th is the Ayn Rand, at least the first section of Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged, in a film form. And of course, when you read that book when you're a child, you see it one way, and you read it throughout your life, you see it differently. But it was Ayn Rand's work, or at least her characterization of women, was very instrumental in me helping see myself, what it was I wanted to see myself as an adult female, fully formed female. And it was an excellent in that development in terms of a full individual, because you got to, so I could see myself as not just a rational, capable, autonomous being with, real volition, but it frames the relationships between men and women. Now, I know Rand used discussions like hero worship and so on. It's complicated, but these were very adult, egalitarian relationships by the standards, or at least when I was a little girl in the 70s and early 80s, trying to figure out what it meant to be an adult female. And that's the thing at least young females are striving for, to be fully functioning adults, especially in light of what our relationship is with the state. And the state, I think most of the people probably listening right now agree, the state is inherently infantilizing. All right, so there's just the general framework from which, or at least where I'm coming from. I'll talk a little bit about trends I see in libertarianism that I think somewhat take away choice and volition from women. Also, God, I hope, let me just check here to see if it's telling me I'm not on air, so I guess I'm on air. Oh, it's 58 viewers, great. All right, kind of several different directions where, no, I'm not going to do several different directions. We're going to keep it pretty short and straightforward. But I do want to talk about the pathologies and the way that female sexuality is one segment of these issues that the left and the state, within cooperation with certain elements of the religious right. I certainly don't want to categorize the entire right that way. And mind you, the way I discuss these things, I am not declaring any oughts. I mean, the ideal in a truly free society is that people will choose any sort of sexuality, sex lifestyle, marital contract, relationship, with, what the power balance is in the relationships, what it means to be a mother, what it means to be a matriarch in that world, with a world of possible and amazing choices. We can choose whatever we wish, and whether that's being a sister wife in a traditional Mormon household, or even fundamentalist Mormon household, or being a young woman in a polyamorous relationship. I see that there's all kinds of possibilities and everything in between. And when we do finally reach Libertopia, I do believe that the judgments about women and these discussions won't even be necessary. We won't even think about the concept of feminism, because the very notion that, and people won't want me to define it at this point, but I think most of you understand that this is coming from an individualist perspective, a fully realized human being, an autonomous being. And that, to me, should be the end goal of feminism. And I think if you look back to early feminism, that clearly was. Feminism didn't stray from that track too much until late 60s, early 70s. That's when you see sort of a breakaway from individual feminism. And some of that can be attributed to the to Marxism and collectivism being much more of a part of feminism. Others would probably attribute it to, sorry about that, others would probably attribute it to, I should not do anything before I have caffeine, but I'm just not drinking caffeine. So the can be attributed to other trends, and I think part of it were trends, I say reactions to the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution really unmoored a lot of people, and everything. It changed our relationships with men. It made men very, very confused, and a lot of why I wanted to continue this discussion was that on my occasions when I get to look at Facebook, I saw Brad Spangler, who started out as elected a libertarian official and has become a primary anarchist, one of our anarchist intellectuals now, discussing things like, well, what does it mean to be a slut? Is it bad that a woman's a slut? And just kind of putting out the kind of frustrations men have, I think, with what it is that they are supposed to expect from women sexually or in a relationship in terms of partnership, not a partnership. What does it mean for a woman to be sexual? Does a woman fully consent to sexuality? Some of this, too, is from kind of the lazy way I've seen left libertarianism approach feminism. It's not too many years ago that Charles Johnson and Roderick Long tried to rehabilitate Andrea Dworkin. When I'm being a jerk, I could say that's like, you know, rehabilitating Hitler if you're a woman. But that old way of thinking, that very narrow gender feminism way of thinking, should not be what libertarianism aspires to, given that so much of what that sort of feminism relies on are recreating what the ideal relationship should be with the woman, the state, through the state. So, I mean, that's not something that's terribly, terribly promising. I don't know. I'm just, I'm now down to since I haven't figured out a way to read off my notes entirely and look at the camera, but screw it. You guys just need to hear me. You don't need to see my face talking about it. I'm going to go back to kind of the beginning. Leftist gender feminism that comes from the left, so gender feminism and so on. All those things involve very much a return to a structure, in the idea that women are a collective and can be described in one way. In other words, that there is a female sexuality, that there is a womanism, and the left has a very romantic view of female sexuality and femalism. They tend to believe women are inherently compassionate. That's clearly not the case. We just saw Susan Rice and Hillary Clinton and Samantha Power basically insist that Barack Obama test his testosterone. Let's talk about this a little bit too. Test testosterone by throwing himself into yet another war. And if I'm taking the wargasm view of this, Barack Obama really needs to show himself, partly because he's been framed as a black man. So not that that's necessarily true, but because he's been framed that way, very, very important that he showed who the white male establishment, of which he's very much a part of. And I'd say he is a member of the white male establishment, given his actual background and the structure of his career. To prove his masculinity, he went right into Libya. And this is how I see it. I mean, this is not I'm not speaking as someone from antiwar.com, but just looking away from it psychologically as a feminist. You know, watching the way Hillary Clinton and all different ways, Susan Power, through the use of, you know, compassion, responsibility to protect, which of course, when you hear that kind of compassion coming from a woman who has the entire military might of the U.S. government behind it, you should be, of course, terribly concerned about that kind of compassion. But you know, Susan Rice, the rational one, the rational female who seems slightly sexless. Asexuality definitely is a help in a woman's career. If you can seem detached and above it all, you'll have fewer problems. And then Hillary Clinton, who, you know, does seem to raise the ire of every misogynist, and I can understand why through my male lens. I can certainly see how that's the case. So I don't know how I got off that tangent. I'll go off on foreign policy if given half a second. So I just need to get back to the issue of women here. But women clearly are not more compassionate, or not any more compassionate collectively probably than men are. We romanticize that idea for all sorts of reasons. Perhaps because because the idea of giving and rearing life is so sacred that we can't imagine that women are just as prone to cruelty, violence, sadism as everyone else, bullying. If you've been experienced growing up in let's say an all-women's school or in a sorority, you certainly know that women create hierarchy and can be just as brutal. they understand power exchanges just as well as men do. So, where was I going with that? Never mind. I got to do caffeine in the morning. This no coffee thing is not working for this sort of thinking. That, and I'm being very, very general here, there's about 17 schools of feminism. About 14 of them roughly have some elements of socialism. Therefore, there's some element of collectivization and theft for the sake of helping others. And that always sounds wonderful. I mean, I never, working in the anti-war movement, you never really can get terribly upset. You hear your leftist friends, they just want to feed the poor, protect the worker, so on and so forth. It's all wonderful things in theory until you realize it involves the thug mentality. And women have, have an amazing way of rationalizing thuggishness and violence. So it's of no help to, to me, it's just certainly no help to imagine entirely that women are actually all that different from men. I mean, we do have differences. I mean, I understand there's some differences, but it just, in the modern world and the way we actually conduct ourselves, are the differences that meaningful? And should we be doing anything? I mean, should libertarianism or anarchism, and I want to break up some of the different, where I see some of the different schools of anarchism and libertarianism going in direction of feminism. And I mean, direction where they're taking feminism. And generally, I see negative trends, with the one exception, and this is, I think people would find this somewhat surprising, where I see the real future for a much more radical vision for women. I don't think there's any future with left libertarianism for women entirely. It already seems to have gone in the direction of adopting the left's view of patriarchy as being so pervasive and must be overthrown. And it's not to say that I don't think patriarchy is absolutely ridiculous, but the way they go about it and the way they frame women as inherent victims that they can't possibly have power has terrible implications for contract law, for the idea of freedom to contract, which is going to be a very, very basic notion in an anarchist society. So without that freedom to contract, without that very sense that women, if you don't believe that women are equal power brokers, it's utterly unthinkable that women have any future in a left libertarian world. Further, because left libertarianism has ties to anarcho-primitivism, it's very hard as a modern not to imagine really without markets and really without thriving. I mean, a thriving form of, I don't want to use the term capitalism, but where you have big business and where you have creation and wealth, where women can truly be free. I mean, there was a time, and this certainly would be the case probably 120 years ago if I were the same person, is that right now I'd be beating my clothes against a rock to wash them. I certainly wouldn't have time to muse about what I think the role of women should be post-state. So, for me anyway, this is the direction of libertarianism is, I don't want to say concerned, that sounds patronizing, but we need to be very, very wary of what it is we're looking, that we're giving off, that the future of women under anarchism is not going to be more limiting by creating this ought of what women should look like, or this phony expectation that women will bring more compassion, empathy, and peace. And I'll tie this back to sexuality in a little bit because it all does to do with issues of power. But the return to very, very primitive structures, unless there's a value on the kind of the frontier mentality where women are building their own houses, building their own structures and creating things on their own terms, it can be very, very easy to slip back into patriarchy without modern conveniences, without an opportunity for women to leave and to gain and create wealth. I mean, that certainly traps women in many situations. And these would all be unintended consequences of what that future direction would look like. With moderate libertarianism, or sort of what I call the old guard mainline conservative libertarianism, which I think might be different for some people, where I see the traditional institutions of the libertarian movement, Cato and Reason. I mean, those are dinosaurs at this point. It's very, very difficult to expect institutions, largely informed either by older gay men who've been libertarian from the beginning, to really see women beyond the romanticized Rand, Patterson, and Lane. That view of women where they can abstractly worship a goddess in theory, but generally their interactions with women are just as retro. I mean, gay men are no more progressive on the subject of women's rights generally straight men are. Men have an interest to protect. I mean, they are they certainly are men first, and that cannot be disputed. With the more hip moderate libertarian direction, the lavishness of reason just seems, I mean, like a holdover from the 90s as well, and I don't see that going any further. It's hard to imagine Penn Jillette or the South Park Boys or having anything original or creative or at this point to say about women, other than they themselves seem to be more relaxed about female sexuality. The other side to that is, though, you see when men can make some peace with female sexuality, they often become quite threatened. This is where you get like the Chris Rock or the Adam Carolla antipathy toward actual female freedom, and I mean the vulgar misogyny of of that kind of comedy, which is very, very popular among the hip anti-establishment South Park Republicans, is really just another form of sickness. It's not really, I mean, it's certainly one view you're entitled to, but not something that I find particularly progressive or interesting in 2011. Where do I see hope? The hope is coming from the strangest place of all. People try to miscategorize, people are trying very desperately to figure out what the Ron Paul movement is. The young people are coming from the left, and the women especially, and you're seeing more women. First time in libertarianism, I've never seen such a cohort of independent, active, truly liberated young women as I'm seeing being drawn into Ron Paul, and you're seeing from every aspect. I mean, more bisexuality, more participation in sex work, certainly less marriage, different familial structures. These are not, and I say peace to the people on the left who are quite frightened that Ron Paul is going to, abolish the Civil Rights Act and bring us back to Jim Crow, is that the young people in the Ron Paul movement collectively seem quite much more progressive. So I'm actually, if that's the form of libertarianism, and I'm sure there's many, many flaws there, but if that's the form structure it's taking, I don't worry as much for the future. I mean, there will be a women's movement. No, it'll be a post-women's movement. There won't be need to be, because women will finally be understood as individuals. So, all right, I'm having a brief anxiety attack, so I'm going to step back for a second and take care of that and put this right here. See if I can do this here. Oh, how empathy can reshape our politics. This will probably be my next discussion at some other time about Kathleen Berry, about remaking war, remaking man. I'll be right back. Hold on just a second. I wish I could do things that would make this stand up, but all right, for now. Okay, maybe not. Oh, that looks good with the cover. Yeah, that's even a little better there. That's great. All right, we'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I won't joke with you. The setting up a computer right before the conference I thought was going to be just such a breeze, and I thought I'd get this right. I don't even know what the chat place is, which I'll try to find in a little bit, for the 63 of you who patiently are waiting for me to not ramble. But I'm actually on a roll now, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about. I'm going to tie this back. I want to tie this into things that are actually currently happening in libertarianism. Anchor. The excitement on April 15th about Atlas Shrugged, the first third of Ayn Rand's masterpiece in film form. It's not art. I mean, it's like things you'd watch on the U.S. network. C-list actors, decent production values, but nothing that's going to blow you away. You might be able to detect where the CGI comes in. But what is exciting about this is that seeing Dagny, an actual authentic feminist heroine on screen, you rarely see this portrayed in films. I mean, you do see women, there's certainly women heroines, but the kind of women who strictly live for themselves, live on their own terms, who do contract and create wealth and create art, are rarely seen on screen as independent as women who, they're always defined in terms of a man. There's always a female love interest in a movie. You rarely see something that's titled the male love interest in a movie. I don't know why it's going dark. But seeing that on screen was a really wonderful moment. Not because I thought, this will stand the test of time, like as if some great, I mean, this is not a great piece of art. It's just the fact that it's there and was created, and that you can actually see something like that is amazing. All right. What else? Yeah, I had some major. I don't know. I've got to rethink the whole no caffeine thing. This is not working so well for me. Oh, we're seeing all kinds of. Oh, what we are seeing? Hold on. I want to go a couple pages into this. This is the same notebook I use for everything. You see this notebook thrown around before. Oh my God, this is something great. This is one of those great markers. Strange things that happen in time between women and the state. It's only been really in the past 40 years that women, and we don't even think about this anymore, but really the past 40 to 50 years that the law has changed, where women can have their own bank accounts, women can keep their maiden names or change their names entirely when they get, or change their names to something completely different instead of taking their husband's last name when they get married. There's all these different things that have absolutely been an amazing step forward of the state going away. And when the state does wither away, it's going to be very hard to keep the rationalizations in. So, okay, Angela, you're going to talk about sex, right? So you baited us in here. Please, talk about sex, right? Because, I mean, no one wants to hear that much feminist theory crap. What's disturbing, or at least what I found disturbing, and I was thinking back to Brad's status updates, is that women can't essentially win regardless of where they place themselves. There's different, at least in the public, relative to what they look like in the public, what the neighbors think, what other women think. And it's very, very important what other women think. I mean, women have their own hierarchy, so women get labeled very quickly. And once they are labeled, it also changes how they relate to the men in their lives, or how men want to relate to them. I had some great genius point here, but I think I'm actually want to go further into some other things. Yeah, I should have not set up this new computer. I should not let the computer overheat. All right. What I don't like, what I do find is another worrisome trend, is on the left. This is really strange. I don't even know why I picked this out, but in most of these Coctopus exposés on the left, there's this diminishment of Rand, and it's always coming from male writers, and it's always basically, I mean, they do everything but say, we hate Rand because she's a bitch. And a bitch, of course, being a female who is not doing what she's supposed to be doing. She's not thinking what she's supposed to be thinking. She's sleeping with people she's not supposed to be sleeping with. And that's where I guess this is going to lead to. Female sex, I have to wonder about what feminism might look like. When I hear, these are things, and this is not to pick on any particular person, but I tune into a Stefan Molyneux podcast, and I hear something like, let's see, prostitution is the leftovers of pedophiles. I think it was roughly to that effect. And I have to think, my God, is that how men see any sexual? I mean, is that how? I mean, and people will say they back up the science. The fact is, there's absolutely no science to prove such, no stats on any of those things that would ever pass normal muster in a basic graduate program. But it's fairly disturbing that, enlightened men, if that's how enlightened men see women who are sexual, or see that promiscuity, and they make the judgment is that is being a sign of a damaged woman or a sign of low self-esteem, then what is it that women can do in the new world, in the new, what are we going to do in the post-state? Are we only going to be having the kind of sexuality that men decide, which is probably serial monogamy, and they'll probably decide at what age is appropriate and not too late or too early for you to lose your virginity. They'll probably mandate, what will it be like next? Will it be that all women have to conform to that notion? I don't know. This is much better thought out in my head when I was talking to myself earlier, but I know this will give me I'll probably do something different on foreign policy this time. I ramble too much because I get so angry. Man, women are going to be the ruination of everything. I mean, you've got Carolyn Glick in Israel. We've got like a, we've got someone who's actually like leading, encouraging, inciting to people to racism. You have Christine Smith. I don't know. I think, setting back bisexual alcoholics about 50 years. She meant well, though. She really does. We have Michelle Bachmann. I'm not entirely certain where that direction is going, but she, as a female archetype, she's the MILF. She's a woman an older woman that men really would like to have sex with. I'm not entirely certain. I imagine that her views on femininity or feminism are probably terrible, though I suspect in her own life, like a lot of so-called conservative women who claim they, who talk the talk, but then they are in public, having their own careers and separate identities. So that never really works. That never really works for me. You've got Maggie Gallagher, making sure that gay men stay as shamed and sick and pathological as possible. Hillary Clinton, who hasn't met a war. I mean, the woman is not capable of showing restraint unless it involves someone she's paying out, a dictator. There's women, and women are leading, but that's not the kind of leadership I imagine in a post-state society. Those are not individuals. Those are all women who seek power over others. Those are all women who seek to remove rights. Perhaps, men do call them bitches, and it's terrible. Every time I hear a male, when I hear a libertarian male use the term bitch or cunt, which is slightly more common than you might imagine. And it's always said in anger, and it's said the way faggot is said. It's never said, hey, you sexy bitch. That's a very different thing. It's always said in anger, and it's always based on ultimately that you're reduced to the twat. That's what a woman is. When we say that, when we say things like that, that's what we've reduced the female to, and a twat that refuses to fit properly in a box that refuses to conform. But then again, you see all those examples of women under the state, and those are all women that I named that have some relationship with the state, and with the state demanding the state change something or remove something or create or change or reduce someone's rights or collectivize or ultimately infantilize. There's so much infantilization. I can barely stand to listen to domestic news anymore because you have to hear so much about collectivism. On every level, these things should be challenged. People complain quite a bit about Collectivist and George Soros, but the people who should, of course, be carefully monitored would be Bill and Melinda Gates. They have been ruining Africa through the Bush, and this is largely the Bush administration's fault. The Gates basically went along with it, but this shows you just how unreflective even billionaires are. In an attempt to reduce what they believed was an epidemic of AIDS in Africa, which I'm sure there's plenty of evidence for some kind of disease, something there. They abided by the Bush administration's pledge, and I call the pledge. This is the basically a pledge that in no way, basically they would do everything to, no money could be used to educate people, sex workers, on using condoms, basically, is what it boiled down to. And the Gateses went along with this, and this, of course, creates not allowing sex workers to use condoms, and they refuse to address the issue of sex work in a respectful way, and reducing women's choices. And someone even as McKinnon as Martha Nussbaum would say, you can't, whatever you do with women, reducing female choices can never, ever, ever be the solution. But the Gates is unchecked, and they've, managed to, for at least 8 years, and managed to keep sex workers from seriously participating in the debate, and the Bush administration, of course, helped. But those are the kind of just daily examples where there's no level, and there's no space in our life where some issue of, freedom, feminism, and the state, which I haven't read in years, but I should read again, doesn't impinge somehow. So what have I boiled down to? Okay, so most of the old libertarian ways of thinking are hopeless. The only hope really is where I see the Ron Paul females. And yeah, I do notice that they're from the left and they tend to be a bit new agey, and that clashes with my Randianism, but I am very, very grateful that we have entire, like hundreds of young women, maybe thousands, who feminism won't even be an issue because they'll be so far beyond that in their way of thinking. They're mentally toned and trained through individualism, and it's an amazing diversity of women too. When I say these women, they're not all They come, I mean, some are religious, some do come from a bit more conservative background, or at least in their approach to things, but the way they conduct their lives are strictly on their own terms, and this is not, they're not easily cowed or manipulated or scared off by the last of the dinosaurs in the libertarian movement, who are, very much holding on to its male-only structure, where, we keep the goddesses, Rand, Patterson, and Lane in, I don't know, my screen's gone off, whatever, in some abstract form. I mean, these are real women, really realized women. They're not, and a lot of them are post-electoral office. They're beyond, they're beyond the kind of self-esteem seeking that usually why people run for office. Obviously not people that I'm speaking to right now. Most of you ran for office for some very obviously legitimately and clearly thought out reason, but the average person, it's a form of celebrity. I don't see the young women needy or clingy that way, which means, they are not secondhand in the way they approach the world, and I'm very, very excited about that trend. And I certainly hope that whatever superficial nonsense happens in the 2012 races, which, is terribly unimportant. I mean, electoral trends are only amusing as horse races, and, for cultural lessons like Christine, what is her name? The Catholic turned evangelical, obvious bisexual alcoholic party girl who ran in Delaware, who doesn't masturbate. I mean, that's fine. I can relate, I'm sure, to all that in some ways. But beyond that, the elections are terribly important. But the overall trends are terribly important. And seeing what, for some reason, whatever it was in Ron Paul that spoke to these, who speaks to very, very vibrant, intelligent, independent-thinking women, and many of them have turned to anarchism. But whatever that is, that needs to be cultivated, and that's a very exciting trend. I think part of that is probably born from the anti-war movement. The anti-war movement does certainly appeal to a certain kind of female who wears her brass ovaries proudly. So I'm very, very excited about the future. Once though it's clear, though, that we see directions in terms of carefully monitoring whether it's the old mainline libertarianism for its laddishness, or for just a dismissal of women entirely, or the more left libertarian leaning, that we not make sure that that the way we approach markets doesn't limit women, and that we're not rehabilitating. And it's not necessary to rehabilitate Andrea Dworkin. I mean, it sounds dated and ridiculous and collectivist, and it's based really out of her own willingness to confront her own issues, and it's not, I mean, not that her writing wasn't brilliant. I mean, she certainly is brilliant in a million and one ways, she was, but that's the road toward fascism. And I do still see, when the right talks about feminism linked towards fascism, they really don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't really understand. I mean, they sense on some level, they have some instinct that collectivism is bad, but beyond that, they're really quite clueless in what it actually entails. It does make it fascistic and oppressive, and I do think it has to do with the idealized notions of what the left imagines females to be. Women are compassionate, loving nurturers who think sex should be beautiful and floaty, and with little angels and harpsichords and unicorns, spraying, baby soft love perfume in the background, or whatever it is, maybe fragrance-free, organic something, I don't know. But yeah, it's an exciting future. All right, I've been doing this for half an hour, and I want to see, there's probably questions. God damn, where would they be? Well, I see a bunch of Agorist things down here. That must, oh, maybe the chat's right. God, Angela, just look at the damn page. Okay. Am I looking at it? I see something agoric. Oh. Oh, I just look like I have Mark's questions here. Damn. All right. Let me see what, let me go back. I can just look at just common sense, just look at George's email. All right. There should be one right there. And there it is. Just think, Angela. Still works. The one for the website for your channel. Oh, okay. Oh, I can do that. All right. Let me find that. Oh, there it is. It's coming. It's coming up. Let's see. Oh, come on. I praise you 60 some odd people for actually sitting here through this. I so appreciate it. Not that I wouldn't have talked to myself. I would have, though I probably would be less inhibited. It's much easier without an audience. Oh, Jesus. Okay, sorry. Okay, now where the chat is. Where's the chat? Okay. I think most of my life is proving Charles Murray wrong in that IQ really does not make that much of a difference. All right, let's see. Looking here. George says to call him at any time, but I somehow think this is not the right time to call him. Damn, Angela. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know where the chat is. If one of you wants to email me and tell me where, or you can just email me your questions. I'm probably much better in slow writing than I am actually talking to myself, so. All right. Blog, forums, chat. Damn it. All right. I will definitely make this up to George by being much more of a help for the next conference, which I believe will be on peace and anti-war issues, because I clearly have screwed this up. But all right, I'm going to give up on that and go back to my regular page here. And how much time do we have? Oh, we have 10 more minutes. Feel free to email me or tell me I'm full of crap or whatever. That's all helpful too. I may be, so then I would rewrite and adjust accordingly. But yeah, it looks like there's some great stuff on here. Mine probably isn't one of them, but there's so much more material. Sorry about not knowing where the chat is. I am an idiot. But let's see where we go here. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Corey Moore. Thank you. One of our fellow LRN people pitching in. Nice. Thank you. Thank you, Corey. Awesome. The voice of radical dissent. Help me. Okay. The Facebook box. Oh, it's the Facebook box. So connect. Oh, damn it. Okay, well, this is not the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me on Ball Broadcasting by a long shot. So just bear with me. I think I can find the chat here. Thank you, Corey. Now, 306. Oh, hey. Oh, okay. So, all right. RF got me through GChat. Okay, hey. Oh, yes, Chuck. Thanks, Chuck. Oh, thank you, Jamie. Yeah, you're awesome. Okay, you too, Nick. All right. I love you guys. Yes, Chuck. Yes, Daly. You can ask my mother about that. All right. Okay. Angela. All right. My bud, Arnoff asked, Angela, how can we encourage women and girls to be their own selves and express their own power? Here's the question. I find an occasional smack upside the head, I guess, with child rearing might work. No, it's actually not what I would suggest. I would, very, very important that you allow young ladies to make their own decisions as soon as they're able to have speech, whether it's choosing between that sippy cup and that bottle, or, you know, between the fake TVP chick-in McNugget, You know, you let them make their own choices. Let them play baseball. My parents were amazing on that level. They did not shame me when I refused to take my baseball cap off or dressed like a girl for many, many years and was using the excuse of dressing like Angus Young at Halloween to cross-dress, because it was pretty obvious that I was probably not going to be the straightest, most feminine kid on the block. But whatever your daughter's tendency is, I mean, if she wants to wear frills and have unicorns dancing on her head and fairy dust, or she wants to be, um, you know, a football player, you gotta allow that. That would be one. So Angela, there you go. And thank you, man. Thank you for asking. To Mrs. Sean, you're beautiful too. Okay, and I'm seeing you right there. Hey Jay. Oh, just all a bunch of funness. Okay. Oh, you're all great. Oh, the difference between the collective views of men's and women's proper sexuality is the issue. Yeah. All right. No. Now here's something. That's good. No, that's exactly it. And different kinds of men have different reasons. Okay, Dan. That's exactly the kind of thing that if my brain were working, I would be becoming. Mrs. Can asks, what do you say to people who feel feminism took women out of the home to leave our children to be raised by the state through public daycare? Well, there's certainly I mean, this is certainly. Oh, God damn it! The coctopus is wandering through the back here. It'll go away. It'll go away. There is an element into that, and I think part of how, with the choices that women have to do things, also comes the sense of that that women. God, let me frame this differently. This isn't an is question. It's an ought question where I want to see women have all the possible choices. We could argue, and I think this might be a better question for the people who are doing the Federal Reserve discussion about when women can't be in the home, or when one partner can't be in the home. There's a lot, actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Gann, there's a lot, I want to answer that more thoroughly, but I want to answer that, kind of think that more in writing and outline it a bit. Stefan, my favorite bumper sticker, it's a toss-up, I think it's a Liberty sticker that has the picture of Abu Ghraib, America, yes we can. That's a good one. Boy, big government does kill a lot of people, and the one, and Barack Obama, that straight white male corporate overlord you elected to feel good about yourself. To Mr. Crane, you know, I think Mexicans, like, you should hierarchy. It should be like a hierarchy, like Palestinians, Mexicans, Irish, and that's how you should have a racial hierarchy. I think would be best. So I think we'd go with the racial hierarchy would be good. I don't know where I'd fit here, but you know, I imagine on Planet Jamie it's going to be fun. This is Ms. Telpa. We've gone away from raising children communally as well. Women should be able to work on whatever they want. Yes, absolutely, community ideal. Thank you, Stefan, for actually bearing with me. I can't believe so many of you bore through me. I owe you all. I owe you all at PorkFest drinks, because clearly anyone who put up with me this long should. I didn't understand. I consider men's views of feminism as secondary. That's what Jay says, and that may be. I mean, I hate to say that, because I mean, I want to treat every person as an individual, so I want to believe each male has a right to weigh in on this, and I think Corey and I had a couple levels of correspondence on this, because I think I once said, I don't know if I care what, straight white guys think, and Corey made the point that that's really kind of ridiculous and anti-intellectual and not very individualistic. Pete wants to know about low-hanging fruit. Way too sexual, Pete. This is not that kind of discussion. Okay. All right. I knew this would go in the wrong direction. Oh, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Nick. God, I'm sure I owe you something. Maybe a kick in the ass, but probably just a really good handcrafted. I think Gibbs and I are going to probably do first hour Buzz's party. Maybe the first half hour will be mixed drinks. It'll be really specialty. That will be specialty drinks. Men do have a conflict of interest problem when it comes to feminist issues. Oh, certainly, certainly. But understand, as a woman, I'm not trying to stop any of you from being a man. I'm personally committed to not stopping any of you from having all the consensual sex you want with other women. I'm not judging male sexuality. I think it's, in whatever form it is, straight, gay, asexual, celibate, whatever. I celebrate that just as I do women's diversity. Oh, the Rainbow Gathering. All right, I gotta write some. I gotta write some down. I think I'm meeting new friends today. Thank you, George. George Donnelly has brought a lot of good things into my life over the past since I met him or got to know him online, 2007 or 2006 or so. I need to introduce myself to Kelly when I get offline here. All right. And all right. Okay, we've got any other questions here? Oh, tour with no name. I'm gonna put that out there. Tour with no name. I'm gonna actually look that up since I have like 3 computers going. Awesome. All right. Oh, you've got so many great activists. I'm so glad you all did show up. I am really glad. Oh, okay. I'm just looking. I've got people G-chatting too. This is wonderful. Thank you guys. It's an honor to get to talk to some of you, and so you can hear what goes on in my head when I do my hair in the morning. I guess, Ray, I'm going to say the conflict of interest problems. It's probably ultimately in your best interest that women have the freedom to be their best selves, to pursue themselves to the max. Maybe ask yourself, I mean, do you, I mean, no, of course, if men want this, maybe, I mean, some men do want, lots of men do want secondary creatures, or they do want, the sexy creature. I mean, the woman of most men's dream is not is not the dronish graduate student intellectual. I'm sure that I'm fitting into that archetype myself. But men should have the freedom to pursue that if they wish, and I'm certainly not going to stop a man from doing that. But for a woman who strives to be a man's equal, I mean, the sexual dynamics can kill sexual dynamics, perhaps. Oh, what is the mistake that individualist men often make when speaking to anarchist women? It's not really. It's not so much the speaking. It's the lack of deodorant and brushing teeth. No, I'm not going to make that joke anymore. It's old. I think the assumption. I don't think that individualist men make mistakes based on their individualism. I think it's just bad habits, and also too because unfortunately the libertarian world has been so isolated, and there's been so few women that they don't really get a chance to have a full, rich, dating experience because there's so few women that are really love anarchism yet. But that's changing. I think the most important thing to be is I would ask, I think this is and I don't know if this would be a turn on for any other human being, but I think that the biggest turn on you can ask a woman an anarchist woman to meet, like, something. This would be the best kick. Like, so what brought you to freedom? What made you decide that you don't need the yoke of the state or the yoke of a god or gods or any other thing to dictate the course of your life? And I think that once you accept that a woman has that thoughtfulness, that I think you open up the doors there. From Chuck, if you won't try to change men, and you don't think women should try to change men, then why are we talking about it? Well, Chuck, I mostly do things. Most things that I do on feminism is basically a way to code to other bisexual women on the down low that I'm available. That's why I do these things. That's why I sound like a dude too. I know you're all here because you want to know my game. Let me tell you, I'll share my secrets. No, Jay was saying, speaking of showing respect for another human being's point of view. The fact that you asked that question though means you probably don't have necessarily that problem. But I think we're libertarian men, and I'm kind of taking it back a little bit. It's just that it's a generational thing to some degree because there was a period where there were fewer women in the libertarian movement, and a lot of that it was during the years that mailing lists and the approach was definitely an outreach to the right, especially the atheist moderate, the atheist computer programmer pothead right, which is God bless them, they mean well, but yes, Seth, this is a secure bunker in West Hollywood. God, where was I going with this? I was so easily distracted. I'm like, I have the attention span of a lab rat. All right. Oh, I still got time. Great. I'm going to keep on rolling here then. So wait, I want to go back. I want to make sure I'm getting Jay's question right. I think some of it's just a generational situation with people in the Libertarian Party. For during the period, there was too much outreach to a certain kind of conservative, and I think that didn't make it particularly helpful for new women to come in. The other issue is, too, is that women aren't as involved in activism generally because still the gender responsibilities that, women still tend to the young. I mean, this is true of all women, whether you give birth or not, and they certainly tend to the elderly. So it's very, very difficult for women to even necessarily have the time to really develop themselves as anarchists. But yeah, I'm going to explore, Jay, I'll explore that better. You deserve a better answer than my rambles. And yes, I love you too, Mrs. Sean. I really do. You're awesome. George says I have 7 minutes, so I'm going to start wrapping this up. I'm just glad you all sat through this with me because it's a total experiment on my part, and in the time I've been here, you've actually given me some real solid ideas about things I do want to think about. I don't write anymore, but I do like to occasionally share my insane thoughts with the other anarchists. So I much appreciate it. Angela, I think as real freedom becomes a true and legitimate way of thinking, I mean legitimate for those who need that kind of thing, women will find what you are talking about. It's okay to take notes and do an outline. Yes, thank you. No, these guys, thank you guys. You're being really thoughtful, and I'm glad it's a lot of men here too. I think it's really important. I appreciate the solidarity because we want to go in a direction that gives women more choice, and whatever those choices would be. I mean, like I said, I'm not interested in creating aughts for women, and as a kind of an anti-feminist, but Christina Hoff Sommers used to say in the 80s, and one thing that's right is that there are women of character in every conceivable form, religion, style of living. So I think that's the thing that should be developed. We got a good question here from James Paul Gonzalez. Which strategy do you use to reach women largely ignorant of the liberty movement? What issues? Oh, very, very good. Common ground to start with philosophy of liberty, politics, and economics. James, I would go with I'd go with the pragmatic kind of Cato-ish approach, though not necessarily, ideologically. I'm going like straight for what affects people's everyday lives. And for women, and this may make me sound like I'm still thinking in the old ways, but midwifery, everything surrounding women in childbirth. The state has things to do with homeschooling. Women, whether they, have a high-powered career or whether they're, stay-at-home moms, they have various concerns about education of their children. Most women from our world do not wish to hand their children over to a state agency or the kiddie prisons. So those issues are always going to be important. But for single women, and for single businesswomen especially, the tax issue, and you can make that in a way that doesn't frighten her, to make her sound like you're trying to starve all the elderly or anything. It's really important, though, to reach people and this is true with all libertarians. You got to reach them on the practical level. So you start with the issues that concern them, and also just talking to someone, you find out which issues you can make them libertarian on. And once you click that switch and you do it enough times, and they see that, and you can slowly make them come around to the logic of other things, and you do it really gently, it's amazing how you'll bring people along. From James, do you think marriage is more important to women than it is to men? Still, well, yes. Certainly, even though marriage is changing, and when I say marriage, I'm talking about where you begin with a ceremony of man and wife, and man and wife, did I say husband and wife? And the beginning with a ceremony and a public acknowledgement of relationship. I'm not talking about a marriage license, because I imagine most of the people here are moved away from that. As long as women are bearing children and have only so many years to do that with, and there's certain periods where women are just not going to be able to jump back into the workforce, having a committed partnership, and I prefer this, I'm traditional this way, I prefer saying, marriage, that is still going to be important. And marriage as an institution may always be important. I don't know if post-state, everything's going to fall apart. People, there's more so-called cohabitation, but maybe, I suspect, at least in our community anyway, I think that's what people are talking about, is that they're married, it's just not a state marriage. Amber, Amber's rights, yeah, midwifery, homeschooling, and speaking of Amber, nutrition issues. Women are much more concerned since women are still preparing meals, they're still doing the cooking, everything about raw food, and women are also tend to be more interested in just what's going on in, whether it's, and some people think these issues are cranky, but women, women are very concerned about radiation, fluoride in the water, the environment. And the anarchist women I know, of course, have wonderful non-state solutions. And earlier, Scott Horton was giving a plug for Mary Ruart's book, Healing Our World, when he was interviewing George Donnelly earlier. And that might be one place to start. From Kelly, I think it's becoming less important to women. I agree. It's not about bringing the state and religion into it. Okay, all right. Yes, I think the institution, the way it's currently structured, it probably does have some. I tend to agree with that, but I don't know if that necessarily means we're not still having traditional family structures. They're just not given a license by the state. They're not recognized in the Census Bureau or in the state's courts. So, and I think that may be the beginning of a new kind of partnership, which would be awesome. It is 11:54. I don't want Nick and George to be pissed at me, so I'm going to get offline. Thank you. I am amazingly grateful to all of you for sitting through this. And if you think like you talk like you're going to speak, that's some very good ideas. Chuck, I'm from New York, man. I'm a native Californian. I'm not a native Californian. I mean, I'm a native New Yorker. I just move sound, Yes, I talk this quickly unless the judge is grilling me. All right, guys, I'd love to you all. Hopefully some of you I will be seeing in June, and if not, be seeing you around California. Thanks so much. George, awesome. Thank you. Bye, guys.